In the wake of Georgia Bulldogs dominating the Senior Bowl, I think it's time to talk about it. Is Georgia the new NFL factory? Is Georgia NFLU? Or is that transition's been happening in the last couple of years? You think about the historic draft class that Georgia had in 2022 after the 2021 national championship run, and then they added on top of that in the 2023 NFL draft with another 10 players getting drafted, right? Another couple first rounders. That's the other part. Georgia's not just getting a bunch of players drafted. They're getting guys that are going really high, right? I mean, Trayvon Walker is he's going to end up being, unless his career takes a little bit better of a turn, he's going to end up being one of the quieter number one overall picks that we've had, right? And he went to Georgia, obviously. Jordan Davis, a defensive lineman that's improving. There's a lot of things on top of it. It's not just the fact that Georgia has high picks, and they've always had some high picks. And it's not the fact that the last couple of draft classes have been very fruitful top to bottom, right? And high in quantity. And I think that there's some serious potential that in this 2024 draft that Georgia could end up with double-digit numbers drafted again, off the top of my head. Right, and I did a video a little bit earlier, or I guess earlier in January, talking about who I think could get drafted for Georgia, and the number that I came up with is 12. But you stack all of that on top of the fact that, hey, the Dogs, they're playing well in the league too, right? I mean, whether they're old dogs, new dogs, Georgia players are starting to play really well in the league. I think getting a little bit more of a presence. Jalen Carter, right? He may end up being Defensive Rookie of the Year. Jordan Davis obviously getting that recognition. You think back to a couple years ago, an older dog, Matthew Stafford winning a Super Bowl, Mecole Hardman, a Kirby Smart dog, right? On Super Bowl teams, a Super Bowl contributor, whether he's playing up to his standard or not in recent games, Mecole Hardman is a Super Bowl champion. You think of another one that was between Kirby Smart and Mark Richt, and Sony Michel. He retired multiple times, a multi-Super Bowl champion. So I think that there is a very, very strong argument for Georgia to be considered the new NFL factory, NFLU. We call it RBU. Sometimes we call it LBU. And there's serious examples there. We could break down a couple of these positions that Georgia has been dominating recently. And if I forget someone, please let me know, because that's my point here. A lot of Georgia Bulldog players, they're making rosters. They're making rosters. Ryan Coe from Dawg Post talking about Georgia Bulldogs in the NFL. Real quick, I want to plug two things, and I'm going to be really fast. First off, the newsletter, right? I want you guys to go sign up for that if you haven't. The Dawg Post newsletter, all you do in the description, link is down below. In the description, you go on there, give us your email address, and you get stories pushed out to you every single day. Free premium insider, all of that good stuff. And Eco Poly, I'm plugging Eco Poly as well. People ask me, hey, where'd you get that nice chair? Right, I don't have one in front of me, but hey, where do I get these nice stools, right? You can get it at the Red Zone. You can go and check out EcoPoly, right? They have a couple of samples there. So if you're in Athens and want to check out EcoPoly, that blends a couple of our sponsors together. You can go, and there's a couple stools that you can go check out. There's a big fancy chair you can check out. So if you want to get an in-person feel, and Eastman, Georgia's too far away, definitely hit up the Red Zone, because they've got a couple pieces that you can sample on a barcode that you can scan, and you get a discount, which is also down below. So I appreciate you letting me get through those two things. Back to Dogs in the NFL. Think about linebackers, right? I came on here a couple of years ago, I guess a year ago. Yeah, this would have been after the 2022 NFL draft, so 2 years ago. Wow, we've been doing this a little bit longer than I thought, but Nakobe Dean, he's a guy that slid in the NFL draft. He ended up sliding into the third round. This is a guy that many thought was a first-round talent, and maybe it's justified that he wasn't a first-round guy. If you just look at his NFL production, which has been pretty minimal, he's dealt with some injuries as well. But the guys that Georgia are producing that are at a high level, it doesn't matter if their production was high or not. Right? They've got NFL talent, and they're producing NFL talent, whether they be a high star or a low star. Stetson Bennett's an example of development of NFL talent. Yes, Stetson Bennett made it to the NFL, guys, regardless of everything that's maybe been going on off the field. And what's the deal there? But Stetson Bennett made an NFL roster. He was a former no star, 2-star, 3-star guy that everyone wrote off. He made it. Jake Fromm made it. right? A guy that was a 4-star. Jacob Eason made it to the NFL. So Georgia's got the NFL talent. Obviously, getting it is part of the battle. Producing it, developing it is the other part. But you look at that linebacker, back to what I said, because I got a little bit on a tangent there. I wanted to talk about Nakobe Dean. It ended up being Quay Walker, who was a first-rounder and is turning into one of the better linebackers in the NFL, right? It ended up being his teammate. So sometimes we don't know. And then you get the Sony Michel examples where one Super Bowl he was a big contributor, and another he wasn't as big of a contributor. You get Robert Beal, Mecole Hardman, guys like that making Super Bowls. Charlie Warner making Super Bowls. And look, this is Ohio State's got guys like this. I've got draft histories pulled up right from the last couple of years. Alabama is this too. Ohio State has been. LSU has been. These teams consistently get a lot of guys, but it's been the last few years, and even before, with Georgia getting 10 this past season, Georgia getting 15 the season before. In 2021, they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There were 9 in the 2021 draft. So that was off of the COVID team. That wasn't even off of... Those guys didn't win a national championship at Georgia. The year before that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So they've been getting more and more, but it wasn't like beforehand Georgia wasn't producing a ton of NFL talent. They haven't had fewer than 7 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They haven't had fewer than 6 players drafted in the NFL since the 2017 draft. And part of that is because Kirby Smart was able to convince a lot of those NFL guys to come back for the 2017 season. So Isaiah McKenzie was the only Georgia Bulldog drafted off of the 2016 team that season, right? Because he ends up convincing Sony Michel and Nick Chubb, guys like that, to come back. But since 2018, each year, these last few years, Georgia has had at least 6 players drafted, and that number keeps ticking. It went from 6 to 7 to 9 to 9 again, 15, 10. And this year, I think it could be 12, because you look at guys, especially with the Senior Bowl performances, Marcus Jackson, right? Is he going to get drafted? Well, he just caught a serious touchdown in that Senior Bowl from Spencer Rattler, and he's getting a lot of attention over there. So his draft stock is probably on the rise. A guy that wasn't a huge contributor to Georgia. Obviously, he didn't have Brock Bowers level production. He didn't even have Ladd McConkey level production at certain points. He kind of did this past season. Took a little bit of a step up as a lead role. But a guy that has NFL hands, a guy that's been coached by NFL minds, and a guy that's taking advantage of these opportunities in front of him. So Marcus Jackson, Daijun Edwards at the Senior Bowl, Ladd McConkey, right? I'm not going to list the 12 off the top of my head, but there are guys like Kendall Milton. And then there's your surefire first-rounders and your potential first-rounders and Kamari Lassiter, Amarius Mims, Brock Bowers, guys like that. So there's a reason why Georgia wins national championships. There's a ton of reasons why Georgia has won national championships and why I think they're going to continue to win national championships with Kirby Smart being the leader there. And it starts with getting the players. And the other part is establishing the culture. And building the talent and establishing the culture is what Kirby Smart has been doing at Georgia. And I think it's fair to start calling it an NFL factory. Ohio State, obviously, they've had a lot of guys drafted, but in the last few years, not quite as many as Georgia. You go and look at LSU, and it's the same deal. Obviously, that 2019 or that 2020 draft was huge for them. But Georgia's outpacing these other schools that are known for producing a ton of NFL talent over the last few seasons. And I think that this is a trend that we could continue to see as Georgia is successful, right? Success brings that. With Alabama, it was kind of a de facto thing. Their defense would produce so many players. Their offense would produce so many players. Whether they were key contributors or not, they'd make it to the NFL. And that's what's happening at Georgia, right? And it's happening even more so now with key success and bringing in more classes with talent, because sometimes people get drafted just off of perception. So having really highly rated players makes that easier. But I think Georgia, currently, the NFL factory. Thanks for watching.